This video is long overdue, so I'm gonna try to go through it as quickly and as simply as possible. So here's the intro, Cyberpunk 2077 Part 2, let's go. Deimos Force presents Let's Talk Gaming, the show where we give you a rundown of the latest and greatest games on the market for your reviewing pleasure. My name is Mehdi Hassan, and in our last review, we talked about Cyberpunk's core gameplay and world building in extensive detail, and I also said that after a few months when I have actually experienced all of the game, I'm going to talk extensively about the story. That was quite a few months ago, and I've managed to 100% the story portion of the game. I'm on my 4th playthrough right now, so I think I've experienced all that Cyberpunk has to offer at the moment, so I feel like I'm well prepared to talk about the story now. There is one correction I do want to make from the Cyberpunk Part 1 video. When I was talking about the skill-based dialogue system where if you upgrade a skill to a certain level, it gives you unique dialogue choices, and I thought that that was innovation from Cyberpunk 2077's part because I hadn't seen that system implemented in a game before. Well, in reality I did, and I also showed that game while I was explaining how Bethesda's RPGs usually don't have that kind of depth when it comes to their dialogue. Fallout New Vegas. I played Cyberpunk 2077, then immediately after that I went to Fallout New Vegas to kind of experience what a good RPG is supposed to be. And the more I played Fallout New Vegas, the more I started to disdain Cyberpunk 2077. It has got to a point where I don't even classify Cyberpunk as an RPG. I think due to corporate pressure and the rush that the developers had to go through, this game suffered massively because of it, and I feel like it would have been a full-fledged RPG and a full-fledged story-based experience if the developers were just given the time that they needed to work with. And trust me, even if it took another decade for Cyberpunk 2077 to come out, and after that time, if the game actually released in its full glory, I would have taken that any day of the goddamn week. So, from that perspective, how does Cyberpunk 2077's story feel like? Cyberpunk had a very good blueprint on how to tell the story, but I think there are too many places where enough time and attention hadn't been given, and also some choices that they made in the story, which doesn't really have anything to do with the rush that I explained before, that severely hampers the quality of the story. So let's get into a little bit of detail about that. Overall, I think the story is good. It's a net positive because I've spent so much time with it. Some of the notable things that I can mention are the characters are brilliant. Okay, the characters are very well written. They've been given enough depth to the point that you can actually care about them. Even a character which has been just presented for one act can have a significant impact on you when he finally passes away right after that tutorial act is over. That's because there's been detail put into those characters. But the circumstances in which the characters kind of melt together and go through their problems, those problems are not really presented in a very good way. And that's where the rush comes in. Like, for example, the life paths, okay? There's 3 life paths. There's Nomad, there's Corpo, and there's Street Kid. The differences between those life paths were supposed to be significant, like they said, but they're really not. The only thing that changes between them, like a major change, are the first mission, and there's a side mission at the near end of the story, which you have to do. Now, just those 2 missions doesn't really make that big of a difference. I mean, except Nomad, like the first missions for the other 2 life paths are not even that great. All you do is just talk in those missions, except Nomad where you actually have a unique car chase. Some people might like to argue that there's dialogue changes and ways to, traverse the world and talk to people if you pick a certain life path. They're not that significant either, and I noticed that especially in the last few missions of the game, that no matter which life path you choose, it really doesn't matter. That is so unfortunate, man. Next up is the main story. The main story is 50-50 when it comes to all the problems that I said before. The characters are great. You get to know them really well through the tens of hours that you spend with them. It was a cool time traversing through Night City and then meeting these unique characters and then blowing the shit out of gangs and solving mysteries. It was all really fun. And this whole dynamic with the main missions and the side missions are god tier, by the way. The dynamic between them really solidified my satisfaction with what Cyberpunk had to offer. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not bitter with this particular game. It's because I like it. I really do. But there's one bomb that they drop right at the beginning of the story that really ruffled my feathers, so to speak. In the beginning of Cyberpunk, which is a quote-unquote RPG, they tell you you're gonna be dead in a week. You do a heist, you break into Arasaka Tower to steal a chip. Jackie dies, the chip is then placed inside your head, and then the guy who hired you shoots you. The chip gets damaged, and Johnny Silverhand, who was in the chip, starts to upload himself into your brain, which is slowly killing you. At the beginning of the story, they just tell you this, that you're gonna die. It's not a bad way to progress the story if it was like a linear action adventure game. Like, that kind of gives you an incentive to go and finish the main story, right? Like, as fast as possible. But in an RPG setting, it actually harms the experience, because then you don't have any incentive to do the side missions because you're gonna die. Now, there's a lot of great side missions in Cyberpunk, but that thought always started ticking in my head, like, I'm gonna die, I need to finish the main missions as soon as possible. There's not a timer on the screen, it's not like that, but that thought really messes with you. Like, there are side missions where you visit clubs, there are side missions where you race cars, but all of that has nothing to do with the main story. But the main story is what you need to do to save yourself and save your own life. So that thought is always ticking in your head, like, holy shit, I'm gonna be dead in a week. Why am I out here racing cars? And I really wish this wasn't in the game. This is the same problem that the Bethesda RPGs face, especially Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. But other than that, the main stories are also great, if not a little short. You can literally speedrun this game. That's how small it is. I've tried to finish the last playthroughs I had, like, as fast as possible. I think I could even do it in one sitting. That's how small it is. I think the missions with Takemura were really great. I love that guy. He's such a good character. And that was my highlight of the playthrough, when we had to, go rogue against Arasaka and, try to do some espionage and shit. There are also some more highlights, like Panam's backstory, Judy's backstory, River and his missions, where you legit have to, break into stuff and then do some detective work. That was really great as well. I still felt like I was experiencing a real story and not one that, like most RPGs and nameless, cookie cutter stories that I've experienced for so long. And that was kind of a refresher. But when it comes to the endings, that's where I'm really deterred most people, even me to a certain extent, but I get why they did it. In all the endings, V is destined to die. If you don't take your own life, in every ending, they tell you that you are going to die in 6 months unless Johnny Silverhand totally takes over your brain. This really pissed off most people, because why did I do so much hard work then if I am going to die? It doesn't make any sense. I also feel the same way, like this story would have been done so much better, like these endings even could have been done so much better. And one game that I think does this exact story path really well is Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm not gonna give you any spoilers for that game, just know that it did what Cyberpunk did, but better. Like 10 times better. But I understand why they went with the sad and bittersweet route instead of going the happy route where, everything is hunky-dory and there's no problems whatsoever and you live happily ever after for forever. I don't know. I think that's because most Cyberpunk stories, like from what I've seen in movies and TV shows, the ending is always bittersweet and it always leaves you thinking about your own future. Because Cyberpunk always shows you the perils of technology and the views of the future, like what kind of a future is humanity going to have to traverse. In Blade Runner, it's contemplating, like, is Deckard a replicant or not? In Ghost in the Shell, it's about, can a robot be human? In Altered Carbon Season 1, the ending is also like, everything is fine so far, but still Takeshi has to go out and find the one he loves. And those endings are always bittersweet. Like, there is a little happy part, V is alright for now, and he ended the tyranny and the possible future outcomes that will negatively affect the human race by taking down Arasaka. But also the fact that you did all that, you tried so hard, and then you managed to save everyone, but you still can't save yourself. That kind of a moral dilemma was really appealing to me, and that's one of the reasons why I myself liked Cyberpunk 2077's endings. But I do understand that this exact formula can be done so much better if they had more time to, build up upon that. And for an RPG, an ending can't be that straightforward. Like, if it was an actual RPG would have, you would either live by the choices you made, you would die by the choices you made, you might even sacrifice yourself for the choices you made, and you might even, There could have been an ending where Johnny Silverhand forcibly takes your body because you've been such a dick to him. Like, those endings are what makes an RPG, because your choices matter in an RPG. Your choices are what affects the ending. But over here, the choices don't really matter. And that's the problem that I have with Cyberpunk, is that it's less of an RPG and more of an action-adventure first-person shooter. It's too linear to be an RPG and a little bit more diverse to be a linear shooter. And I think even though Cyberpunk can be improved in the gameplay department and it can fix all the bugs and sort all the kinks out, the story is where I think it needs to have a significant overhaul, but it's simply not possible. And I'm really tore up about that. But I really hope that this game gets the Fallout New Vegas treatment, where they take the same engine, they take the same formula, but they overhaul the story significantly. Like, they spent the whole time just writing a damn good story and putting the gameplay right where it is, in a sweet spot, and just like go ham on the story. That's what I really want from Cyberpunk 2078 or 2088, whatever the sequel may be. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a sequel now. I really don't want the devs to beat this horse to death with Cyberpunk 2077, because it's already very, very flawed. I really hope that they can take this amount of passion, because I love Cyberpunk. I loved Cyberpunk 2077. Even though it had many flaws, I still thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. But I really hope they can take this passion that they have and then apply it to another IP, or apply it to this IP but another sequel, so that we can finally get the fully fledged Cyberpunk experience. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Subscribe to Deimos Force for more content like this. Let's Talk Gaming will continue with other games. I really wanted to get this particular review over with because there was a part 2 that was due. Yeah, I really hope to see you guys next time. This has been Mehdi Talks, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.